Have you ever stopped to think about what God really sees in you before He uses you for something great? It's not your intelligence. It's not your talent. There's something much deeper that needs to happen first. Over the next few minutes, we're going to explore the secret that God uses to transform ordinary people into extraordinary instruments. God has a purpose for you, and this channel exists to help you find it. Subscribe now to receive messages that will clarify your calling and align your life with God's greatest plan. Your purpose is waiting to be discovered through what's coming next. But before we begin, I need to ask you an uncomfortable question. How many times have you asked God to use you while secretly believing you are already ready? Because here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. God doesn't use ready people. He uses broken people. Let's start with a truth that echoes throughout the entire Bible. God has a very specific pattern for the people. He chooses to do extraordinary things. If you look at the greatest heroes of faith, you'll see a surprising pattern. They all went through brokenness before being used. Moses was an Egyptian prince who became a fugitive in the desert. Peter denied Jesus 3 times. David was rejected by his own family. And Paul was a persecutor of Christians before becoming the most influential apostle in history. Do you see the pattern? Each of them had to go through something that humbled them deeply before God could use them. Because pride is the greatest obstacle between you and your purpose. It's not a lack of opportunities. It's not a lack of resources. It's pride. If you're ready to live out your purpose, leave a like. This is your commitment to God. I'm done living small. I'm ready for my calling. Your like signals that you're willing to step into what God designed you to do. We need to understand exactly what this brokenness means. It's not about being defeated. It's not about being destroyed. It's about being transformed. The Bible speaks about this in 2 Corinthians 12-9. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. God's power is made perfect in your weakness, not in your strength, in your weakness. This means that the more you recognize that you can't do this alone, the more you open space for God to work through you. It's a paradox. It's counterintuitive, but it's absolutely true. Because when you're weak, you have no choice but to trust. Many people ask, why does God have to do this in such a painful way? The answer is that pride doesn't leave you easily. Pride is like a deep root that has become embedded in your heart over years. And you can't simply pull out a deep root with a gentle tug. You need to dig deep. You need to apply force. And yes, it hurts, but it's necessary. Here is the most important thing you need to understand. You probably don't know how proud you are. None of us do. Pride is deceptive by nature. It disguises itself as confidence, as ambition, as excellence. And you're there thinking you're being virtuous, when in fact you're being fed by ego. Have you ever met that person who's excellent at everything but never admits a mistake? That's what hidden pride looks like. Or that person who's very spiritual, who always quotes the Bible but never really changes. That's also hidden pride. Because true spiritual growth isn't about knowing more. It's about being more. Humility is not weakness. That's one of the biggest lies our culture teaches us. Humility is strength. Humility is power. The Bible speaks about this in James 4-6. God opposes the proud, but shows favor to the humble. Think about that phrase. God opposes the proud. This means that if you're proud, you're literally putting yourself in opposition to God. But when you're humble, when you recognize that you need God, that's when things start to happen. That's when you begin to experience God's power working through you. Humility is also the gateway to true wisdom. Because wisdom isn't about knowing more facts. It's about understanding life as it really is. Comment and tell us about the calling God has placed on your heart. What is He asking you to do? By sharing your purpose, you inspire others to pursue their own God-given calling. Together, we create a movement of people living their divine purpose. One of the most powerful ways God uses to break pride is through rejection. And this is something that most of us fear deeply. Nobody wants to be rejected. Nobody wants to be left out. But God knows that rejection is one of the most powerful tools to transform a person. Because when you're rejected, you're forced to confront the truth about yourself. You're forced to realize that your identity can't be based on people's approval. And when you finally accept rejection, that's when you discover something surprising. You discover that you're still valuable. You discover that you still have worth. Not because people approve of you, but because God created you. Think about Moses. For 40 years in the desert, he was rejected. But it was during those 40 years that God transformed him. Rejection is a form of adversity, and adversity is one of the greatest tools God uses to transform us. But most of us spend our entire lives trying to avoid adversity, trying to avoid suffering, trying to avoid pain. But God knows that without adversity, you can't grow. Without adversity, you can't develop the character you need to fulfill your purpose. Because character isn't developed in times of ease. Character is developed in times of difficulty. Character is developed when you're tested. And when you're tested, that's when you discover who you really are. Here's the fundamental truth. You can't fulfill your purpose while you're living for yourself. You can't fulfill your purpose while you're living for your ego. You need to die to yourself. And when you die to yourself, that's when you're born into your purpose. That's when you finally start living the life you were created to live. Jesus taught this in Matthew 16:25. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. Whoever loses their life for me will find it. This means that when you die to yourself, when you completely surrender to God, that's when you finally find true life. You finally find the life that really matters. When you go through difficulties, when you're broken, when you suffer, you have a choice. You can let pain destroy you, or you can let pain transform you. You can let pain teach you. You can let pain make you wiser. And that's the choice that makes all the difference. Because pain itself isn't transformative. But when you choose to learn from pain, when you choose to grow through pain, that's when pain becomes transformative. That's when pain becomes wisdom. Think about Job. He lost everything. But in the end, when Job finally encountered God, Job was transformed. Job became wiser. Job became more humble. Here's one of the greatest paradoxes of faith. The more humble you are, the more powerful you become. The more you recognize that you're weak, the stronger you become. The more you recognize that you can't do anything alone, the more you can accomplish through God's power. And this is completely counterintuitive. It goes against everything our culture teaches us. Culture tells us to be confident. Culture tells us to be strong. But God tells us to be humble. God tells us to recognize our weakness. God tells us to trust Him. And when you finally do that, when you finally choose humility instead of self-confidence, that's when you experience true power. That's when you experience God's power working through you. When you're broken, when you're humiliated, when you die to yourself, something changes in you. Suddenly, you're not so concerned about what you can gain. You're not so concerned about what people think of you. Suddenly, you're concerned about what you can give. You're concerned about how you can serve. You're concerned about how you can make a difference in people's lives. Jesus taught this in Mark 10:45. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Jesus, who is God, who is the King of Kings, came not to be served, but to serve. And why? Because Jesus knew that the true purpose of life isn't to receive. The true purpose of life is to give. The true purpose of life is to serve. You came here today because something inside you knows there's more. You know you were created for something extraordinary, but you also know there's something holding you back. And that something is pride. It's ego. And the truth you've learned today is that God needs to break that pride. God needs to break that ego. And yes, this process is painful. Yes, this process is difficult. But the truth is that God has never been closer. God is right there, behind the scenes, working on you, shaping you, preparing you for something greater. So my challenge to you is this: don't wait any longer. Start now. Start today. Look inside yourself and recognize your pride. Be honest about the areas of your life where you're trusting yourself instead of trusting God. And then surrender. Tell God, break my pride, transform me, use me. And when you say that, when you really mean it, when you truly surrender, prepare yourself for a transformation that will change your life forever. Because here's the final truth. God doesn't just want to use you. God wants to transform you. God wants you to fulfill your purpose. And it all starts with one thing: allowing God to break your pride, allowing God to transform you, allowing God to use you. So when you leave here today, remember this. Remember that brokenness isn't punishment, it's preparation. Remember that humility isn't weakness, it's strength. Remember that when you die to yourself, that's when you really start living. And remember that God is with you at every step of this journey. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of brokenness. Don't be afraid of transformation. Because when you go through all of this, when you allow God to break you, when you allow God to transform you, you discover something much greater than yourself. You discover purpose. You discover meaning. You discover true life. The life that really matters. The life that was created for you to live. And that, my friend, is God's promise. That's the hope you can have. That's the transformation waiting for you. All you need to do is allow God to break your pride. All you need to do is surrender. All you need to do is say yes to God. And when you say yes, when you really mean it, when you truly surrender, you're going to discover that everything changes. Your life changes. Your purpose becomes clear. And you finally become what God always knew you could be: a broken person, a humble person, a person who is truly powerful, a person who is truly used by God, a person who makes a real difference in the world. Thank you for being here with me on this journey. Thank you for allowing me to share this truth with you. Thank you for investing in your purpose journey today. God sees your commitment. Make sure you're subscribed so you stay aligned with your calling and God's plan. Now share this with someone who's searching for their purpose. God wants to reach them through you. And now, the next step is yours. The next step is for you to allow God to break you. The next step is for you to surrender. And when you do that, when you really do that, you're going to discover that everything you've ever been looking for was waiting for you on the other side of brokenness. It was waiting for you on the other side of humility. It was waiting for you on the other side of the death of ego. And that discovery, that transformation, that new life you're going to live is going to be more valuable than anything you could gain for yourself, because that life is going to have meaning. That life is going to have purpose. That life is going to have eternal impact. And that's why it's worth it. That's why it's worth allowing God to break you. That's why it's worth dying to yourself. Because when you do that, when you really do that, you finally start living. This video drew you in? Watch the previous one right away. It's part of this structured series on self-discovery and spiritual awakening, building your personal journey.